Focus on Ports, brought to you by Transnet National Ports Authority.
Hello and welcome to Focus on Ports. My name is Phumelele Zondi. Over recent years, we are seeing a lot more collaboration efforts between African nations as the continent strives towards prosperity. The port sector is also getting on board with forming partnerships to increase Africa's profile as a commercial shipment hub and as a serious player in the global trade industry. Recently, a memorandum of understanding was signed between Transnet National Ports Authority in South Africa and the Port of Maputo. CNBC Africa's Nadira Pierre has more on that story.
Earlier this month saw a landmark occasion for the Port of Maputo and South Africa's Transnet National Ports Authority. The CEOs of both organizations met in Johannesburg, where they signed a memorandum of understanding. This agreement will establish collaboration between the ports on matters of common interest.
With TNPA, we see lots of advantages, particularly on transfer of skills in areas like maritime expertise, for areas like training on health and safety, training or providing services on dredging and alikes, as well as on engineering works. We are currently embarking into a very intensive plan of $2 billion of infrastructure development, new berths and new bulk areas, and we believe that TNPA is currently undertaking similar projects, so we are convinced that we can take some advantage from the lessons learned by TNPA during this process.
Lucas says that although it's taken decades for such a partnership to be formed, it's never too late. He hopes the partnership will dispel the misconception of the two port authorities being competitors.
It happened that TNPA offered to visit Maputo, and we identified areas of opportunity. And the history is also supporting. I think the relations at the SADC are improving more and more between our countries. Mozambique is becoming a paramount country in Africa and in the world. Our GDP is quite positive. We're growing in the region of 7.3 to 7.4%. And you know that in today's world, a 7.3% growth per year, it's something unsurmountable, so it's normal that people start looking at Maputo. On the other side, as I told you, Maputo Port achieved a record throughput last year, and I believe the South African, being 80% of our market, are fully aware of it, so it's normal that we start communicating more and more.
The collaboration has already begun. Skills sharing and human resource development, the first on the agenda.
So far, there was a training opportunity for our young engineers that came to South Africa for a week for training. There was also a training opportunity for our talent development managers at the HR level or human capital level. And we are estimating that few other young engineers and operators will be coming to Durban for a simulator in terms of handling of cargoes. That's the short-term approach. And then you have the mariners planning to come to South Africa for training as well.
As highlighted during the signing of this Memorandum of Understanding, Africa is certainly becoming the preferred destination in terms of port systems.
Joining me in studio to further discuss their strategy into Africa is Morwe, Chief Executive of Transnet National Ports Authority, and Jean-Pierre Labuschagne, Infrastructure and Capital Projects PPP Specialist at Deloitte. He's here to give us more insight into the developments and challenges within the continent. Gentlemen, hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, starting with you, Morwe, can you give us a bit more of insight into the Memorandum of Understanding? What's in it?
I think the thrust of the Memorandum of Understanding is that between the Port of Maputo, Port Authority in the Port of Maputo and ourselves, is to identify possible areas at a strategic level, operational level, where we could cooperate and assist each other.
Why is this more important for you?
It is important in the sense that you know, one of the key focus areas is on economic integration. And I'm talking at the level of the African Union, at the level of COMESA, and at the level of SADC. So we need to find a way of assisting, you know, the regional economic commissions, export authorities in Africa. This is but one of the first such MOUs. We're also looking at signing other MOUs with Walvis Bay, with Angola, with Mombasa and so forth.
And Jean-Pierre, how important are these memorandums of understandings across the African continent?
Generally in Africa, poor transport accounts for between 30 and 40% additional cost to consumers. So the more effectively goods can be moved from a port into a country and into the inside of Africa where they don't have direct access to sea is quite crucial just to increase and support the growth of African development.
All right, but Maputo does have direct access. They have a port. And so how important is that between two ports?
It increases the efficiency, and I think there's an understanding. I think one of the biggest delays that often comes in is once something has been offloaded, the delays in getting it through customs and then moving through the network into the country is important. So I think a better working opportunity between trading partners particularly and between port authorities just improves the efficiency of the goods moving.
If this is the first one, what challenges do you foresee, and how do you plan to sort those out with Maputo?
Well, I think the challenge is as much as we are going to cooperate on certain areas, we need to respect the fact that both port authorities have customers that they value, that they would like to keep. And that could be a challenge, I mean, going forward.
Jean-Pierre, infrastructural development is often a big problem in certain African countries. Do you think such agreements are going to function if, let's say, two countries are not on par in terms of infrastructural development?
I think it will be a challenge. Upgrading infrastructure is important for all of us, not just South Africa, but also our neighbours. Moving goods efficiently is key to African growth. I think there's been a marked shift from sort of Afro-pessimism to Afro-optimism within Africa. I think it's supported by the weakening situation in Europe and America. So Africa is a growth opportunity, and relationships between partners and our neighbours in particular are going to be crucial to ensure that Southern and Africa benefit from the investment opportunities arising.
And do you reckon Africa can do it alone without external partners?
I think partners are always useful. I think partners bring different skills to what we have. I think there is a lot of knowledge in particularly South Africa, but Africa as a whole. We export a lot of skilled resources, which I think a lot of people forget. It can be maybe described as a brain drain, but there's a lot of skilled people within Africa. Sometimes there's a changing local regulatory environments, and perhaps that's where inputs and advice can be useful. But a lot of people are willing to invest in Africa. If you look at China, the amount of investment they're doing, they certainly think this is a worthwhile destination. I think it's a question of working effectively with partners to make sure that both parties benefit is what a lot of African countries need to seriously look at.
Now, Morwe, Jean-Pierre talks about skills and skills development. Are there enough skills on the African continent for such partnerships to take place, or will Transnet be going to other African countries to train people that side?
Well, one of the key component of the MOU focuses on skills development on both sides. On MPDC side, on our side. One area, for instance, if you look at what is happening around Maputo, the gas finds and so forth, and the fact that within a few years' time, they would be doing quite a lot of work around the liquefied natural gas area. Both countries need skills in that area, and those are areas that we can jointly focus on in terms of skills development. In terms of going into Africa and having other Africans coming into our area, again, we just started a School of Maritime Excellence based in Durban, and the idea is that where African countries need to develop certain skills, the school would be open for that purposes. But if, for instance, in the areas of oil and gas, we need to pick up skills, let's say from countries like Nigeria, we will do that. So skills development is important from a Port Authority perspective.
But one would have thought Transnet National Ports Authority and Maputo and other ports across the African continent are competitors. You'd like cargo to come to your side, so more trade happens this side, so the South African economy grows. Isn't that so?
Yes, at a certain level, of course, we are competitors. As I said, MPDC have got their customers, we've got our customers. But what we need to start thinking of is competing with other parts of the world as a region, and eventually, you know, as a continent. So those are the areas that we need to identify by signing the MOUs.
And Jean-Pierre, who has more to gain with such MOUs? Is it the countries with proper infrastructure or the countries that still need development?
I think it is a mixture of both. Countries that have infrastructure can always improve. It's about turnaround times. It's not just getting cargoes off the boat, but it's actually getting it dispersed through the rest of the country. It's getting through customs, it's getting it on the rail or the road networks. But I think also countries that don't have the skills can benefit from any improved production and effectiveness in moving and transshipping cargo.
You mentioned other MOUs in the pipeline with other African countries. How far along are you with those?
Well, we would soon be going to Walvis Bay to sign an MOU with the Port Authority there. And we are in discussions with our colleagues from Mombasa. We haven't identified any date in terms of signing an MOU.
And Jean-Pierre, this need for Africa to trade as a region as opposed to different countries, how important is it for the continent? And do individual countries benefit from this, or do they lose?
I think one of the problems with Africa is Africa was traditionally designed to export. So a lot of our materials are export. And even nowadays, there's very little intra-regional trade. The majority of the trade is all being exported to the Far East or to the West or to Europe. And I think benefiting from a stronger regional trade bloc would reduce costs to a lot of our neighbours and to ourselves, but also strengthen that intra-regional cooperation and support Africa's growth as a serious trading partner in Africa.